believe in the power of trust instead of trusting in power. As a global citizen, Rotary felt immediately like home when she joined in 2000 in the Chicago area, USA. So this is introduction of our chief guest. Now over to Rotarian 𝗤𝗰𝗶𝗶 for next proceeding. Thank you.
If 𝗤𝗰𝗶𝗶 is not there on the call, Abhishek, you can proceed with the speaker session directly. You can proceed with the speaker session.
Okay. Good evening, ma'am. You can start now, please.
Okay, so hello everyone. Good evening to you, I believe. I know you've all got your cameras off, and I don't know if that's because of internet capability, but I would rather see who I'm talking to, seeing as we're only 34 people. Could we please turn the cameras on, and then I can have an interactive conversation with you? I think that would be a better use of the time than... I'm happy to share my thoughts, and then I can see. There we are. I can see who I'm speaking to. So that feels much more personable.
Everyone, please turn on their cameras, please.
Thank you. I believe you've invited me here today to your SEARIC Rotaract group and your MDIO to talk about the value of being part of the Rotary family. And it's a pleasure to be invited to talk with you all. I've actually had some recent visits to your part of the world. I was in Chennai as a president's rep. May have met a couple of you there. And I'm coming back to the Institute in Abu Dhabi next week and going on to Pakistan. So it's actually a part of the world that holds a real special place in my heart. And it's a pleasure to have a chance to come and see all of you. I would actually like to talk about two elements of being part of the value of being part of the Rotary family. One is the official line, obviously, as Rotary Vice President, talking about the whole inference and the meaning behind elevating Rotaract. But I think there's also a much more personal angle to being part of the Rotary, the value of being part of the Rotary family. So would it be all right if I shared more personal stories as well as just the company line on the whole thing? Does that work for everybody? I can't see any faces again now. I've got 4 of you, so that's good. Okay, so obviously, you know, we had a situation where effective November 21, Rotaract has transitioned to not being separate from Rotary, but being supported as a part of Rotary. So I guess it's good to share cameras, but maybe not if everyone could stay muted so we don't have an issue. And if people are shy with the cameras, then perhaps you can interact with me through the chat, because I can read that too. So I find it much more meaningful like that. So you're part of the Rotary family, and how wonderful is that? When we talk about the value of that, I have been a Rotarian since 2000, and I have to tell you that Rotary is the gift that has just kept giving to both me personally and my family. So I am so happy that you're not seen as a separate program anymore, but you're going to be fully integrated and elevated to be able to work with Rotarians. At the end of the day, I think that is some of the secret sauce of Rotary, is the intergenerational aspects. And I will never forget when, you know, I was first joining Rotary and figuring out who I was sat next to. I was young myself. I was only 34. My children were 7 and 5 when I joined, about the same age that Paul Harris was actually when he started. And I joined in the birthplace district in Chicago. I spent 25 years of my life living in the US, although I'm back here in England where I grew up now. So I think it is just, as I say, so many opportunities to talk about. And first of all, on the higher level, I think working together, you know, we have our new vision, we have our action plan. Together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, in ourselves. And it's that in ourselves that I think is really where the personal touch comes in. And we don't talk about that enough, because we are about service above self, but there's no denying we get something out of it. By working together with Rotaract, so we've moved from 1.2 million to 1.4, which is fantastic. And I think, you know, sorry, somebody's got their speaker off, they're unmuted, there we are. I think it's going to be a real oomph to achieving greater results, because we do want to increase our impact. We will get much more noticed and be much more relevant outside of the internal conversation externally, if we work and collaborate together and get away from a fragmented effort of Rotaract working separately from Rotary, one club working separately from another, one district working separately from another. And in many ways, I think Rotaract has been leagues ahead of Rotary for some time with your multi-district information organizations, MDIOs, because you don't have the walls that Rotarians got used to between clubs and districts, even though those walls really weren't there. And one of the gifts of the pandemic, of course, is to have the final realization we can communicate and connect like this on an online platform without having to you know, go and get on a plane and travel miles. We can actually just do it right here, right now, which is fantastic. So I will invite some questions at the end. I can see some questions about interacting, and I'll look for some ways to get some response for you. But let me just get some initial thoughts out, if I may. So our 4 priorities: to increase our impact, expand our reach, enhance engagement, and to increase our ability to adapt. I think, as I said, with the pandemic, we're doing pretty well on the last leg. But are we really? Is elevating Rotaract something that we're paying lip service to right now? Or is it truly starting to shift the culture, trying to shift the paradigm that any leader with a leadership mindset is as valuable as any other leader, no matter how many stripes they have through corporate jobs or what age they've reached? I believe personally that you can be born a leader. My children were leaders from a very early age. And I think it is the magic of us coming together that really, really will start to make a difference. Because honestly, when I look at the Ukrainian efforts in Europe, Rotaract was there much faster than Rotary. In Rotary, we have this terrible habit of saying, here's a need, let's have a meeting and talk about it. In Rotaract, you tend to just say, what can we do today? What can we do now? And you connect across all of these networks much more efficiently, and you get there faster. But when we come together, you may get there faster, but we have the experience to know some shortcuts and to have the relationships. So the first thing I think we get from being part of the value of the Rotary family is this global network. How incredible that you will get to be part of this Rotary network at the affordable rates you are. And the fact that Rotaract got to establish their own dues, I think is pretty fantastic, that you had your own say in establishing what those dues are. So that is an enormous aspect. Obviously, grants, global grants, access to the Rotary Foundation and being able to multiply our money. This has been one of the things that attracted me to Rotary in the first place. Not only could I get more done than I could ever hope to get done on my own, but all of the money I contribute to our foundation pretty well gets trebled and does 3 times as much good in the world than I would ever do. So I started saying from a very early stage of being a Rotarian that my charity of choice is Rotary, because that's the only place I know that there's so little administrative cost. So many charities that get supported globally have a very high level of administrative cost. In our foundation, because we have such a large endowment fund, it's the interest on the endowment fund that pays the expenses. So that is why we've had the highest rating of Charity Navigator for decades now, and we're such a respected charity. So it's the value of being part of the global network. It's the value of leveraging our time and our money. But most importantly, to me, it's the leveraging of what it brings from us from a personal growth and a professional growth point of view. I can't even begin to try and summarize how much benefit I've received as developing as a leader in Rotary. you know, when you first join, when you first step through the door of Rotaract and you start thinking, how can I get involved? Maybe you get involved in a project team and you learn about managing projects and project management. Then maybe you become a leader in the MDIO that you're involved with, or your club that you're involved with. And you learn what it's like to lead a club and to inspire others and to build team and to build a shared vision and get people to come with you. And because we're volunteers in Rotary and Rotaract, it takes a little bit more leadership muscle to lead volunteers than it does to lead followers. So one of my favorite sayings is that true leaders create more leaders, not followers. And I think that is something that we really need to stay focused on in Rotary and Rotaract, is always looking for ways that we can lift somebody up, mentoring others, and also reverse mentoring, which is again one of the benefits of you joining the Rotary family. I think our older generations, and I'm included, by the way, if you can't see the grey hair, we have a lot to gain from working with you. So having ways that you can share and reverse mentor, I think that is a win-win for all concerned. So at the end of the day, I think it all comes back to why. Why do we do what we do? Why do we want to give service above self? There's a really great author in the United States called Simon Sinek. And if you haven't heard of him, I suggest you look him up on YouTube. And he has a fantastic TED video, Technology, Education and Development, called Start With Why. And he makes it very clear, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Because it's that emotional part that we connect with, which is why President Jen is such a fantastic president, because she's chief storyteller of our organization. And the stories are what make people connect with us. And if we do a better job on telling what those are. So let me just tell you a little bit about my personal why, if I may, and talk about the journey I've had through Rotary and how that's benefited not just my life, but my children. I was actually 28 when I left England. I happened to be pregnant at the time. And if any of you are thinking of contemplating moving continents when you're pregnant, especially looking at the ladies here on the call, I don't recommend it. It's crazy to do that, right? But I did. And when I got to America, I couldn't work. I didn't have a working visa. And it was a real shock to my system how much of my identity was tied up with the work I did. And I was a little lost for a long time. I was working with KPMG in a fast-paced corporate environment. And luckily, I found an organization called Female, which sounds terribly feminist, but it wasn't. What Female stood for was formerly employed mothers at loose ends. And that became my sanity, because I found people who wanted to balance work with raising children. And that is what I've always wanted to do, is to basically work, be a mother, and contribute to society. So 3 demands on my time, but that's what I knew I needed. So I was very lucky to meet a personal mentor. Her name was Pam, and she offered me a job. And I said, well, I can't work. I haven't got a visa. She said, well, we'll get one. And she did. And it was through the work that we did that I got invited to be in Rotary, through a Rotary club in my neighborhood. And so I joined for networking reasons. And I was just blown away, you know, that I was suddenly in this immediate sense of family with people with the same values as me. So here I was on a different continent, feeling really isolated from family, but immediate community. And if you think about the power of that, think about some of the organizations you work for. What if they adopted Rotary as being their community platform, and wherever people got transferred in a job, there would be an immediate community for them wherever they go? A huge value of being part of the Rotary family. So soon I got a taste for service, because that's what we do. And it really made me feel a sense of purpose. And I think having a purpose-driven life that connects everything you do in your business, in your family, in your career really is motivating and really makes you crave growth and you know, if life isn't about growing, I don't know what it is about. So I took my children along. They were 7 and 5, and I took them to all of these projects that we did. And they got immersed into this Rotary way of life, and it really started to take shape on them. And then the major moment that really crystallized it was that we had a chance to go and work and do a needs assessment in Zambia in Africa. And as it happened, my husband was born and raised in Zambia. So we connected with some of his connections still there. And we took the children when they were just 11 and 13 to work on a project with 36 villages. And we wanted to do a 10-year plan. We didn't want to just go in and build one well and leave and then know that that well wouldn't last the time. So we wanted to take a very sustainable approach to creating jobs and create education. And it was a wonderful opportunity. My children were raised in a rather privileged part of America, and their biggest concerns that their friends were moaning about was whether their phones had broken or whether they didn't have the best Nike shoes. And then to go to Africa and realize that there were children they were meeting who didn't even know when they were going to eat next. And yet they were so happy. They couldn't understand how they were so happy. And they never forgot that. And I'd like to end in a few minutes with sharing a letter my daughter wrote to the Rotary Club. It affected my son and my daughter in different ways. They both took it differently. My son was all about coming back and wanting a car. He was coming up for his 16th birthday. So he bought a car and then he bought a license plate. And I said, oh my gosh, Sam, you don't need that, seriously. But his license plate said 𝗤𝗏𝗰𝗸𝗶, which meant gratitude in Zambian. And even when he sold the car, he kept the license plate. So he's always stayed rooted in gratitude for the life he has. I'll come back to my daughter in a minute. But the rest of my Rotary journey was incredible. I became club president in 2008. The theme at the time was the future Rotary will be in your hands, was a Scottish president. And I think I took that a little personally because I haven't stopped saying yes since, but it's always a benefit to keep saying yes. I had a chance to go to India, do a national immunization project with polio. I eventually became DG in district governor in 14-15 and a coordinator and regional leader. And then actually amazing job I had was to work on the strategic planning team for Rotary International at the time we created the new vision and the new project. And once you've created a vision and an action plan, there's nothing worse in my mind in my corporate job of seeing people do a strategic plan and then put it on a shelf and ignore it. This plan we have has to be a living plan. It has to be something we constantly evaluate. What's going right? What's going wrong? How do we work better doing this together? And we all want to be rowing in the same direction because that is how Rotary will grow finally and not be captured in this paralyzed state. Now, I say that with all respect because I know your area of the Rotary world is booming. My area of the Rotary world, most of the Rotarians, bless them, are over 80 years old. So we have a lot to learn from your part of the world. So let me finish, as I said, by sharing an extract from a letter that my daughter wrote to the Rotary Club that she grew up in. And as I'm reading it, I'd like you to sort of project forward into your Rotary life and where you go from here and what you do from here and bringing your family into it with you, because hear the words as if she's saying it to you. I was never a project in your eyes. I was never a goal or a beneficiary of a fundraiser, yet I, along with many, may be one of your most underestimated accomplishments. While you were focused on improving individual in needs homes, I was learning dedication. While you were focused on serving the homeless, I was experiencing empathy. While you were focused on throwing outstanding events to raise countless funds for countless causes, I was helping sweep the floors, being shown that no task is too menial for anyone. While you were focused on providing clean water, basic education, self-sufficiency to rural villages in Zambia, I was taught gratitude in the most humbling way any 11-year-old could ever experience. It is not just the people you serve or the beneficiaries of your funds that benefit from your service above self, but the many others you inspire to do the same. I may be the one who's up here today, but I assure you there are many more who were raised alongside who those words ring true for. And I ask you on behalf of all your children and all your future children, I'll put to you, that you never stop doing what you're doing, to never lose your heart, passion and drive, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be an international volunteer enthusiast and know that I want to dedicate my life to sustainable development. And I can tell you, she took me by surprise. I didn't know she was going to be speaking. And I think that moved me more than ever. So I realized that day, not only was Rotary a gift in my life, but it was a gift to my children as well. And it's the gift that keeps giving. So as much as we talk about membership, I always like to say, who have you given the gift to? Right? It's a gift. So if we're here to talk about the value of being part of the Rotary family today, I think it's priceless. I don't think you can put a number on it. So why don't I stop there and see if anybody has got any questions or wants to be part of that conversation.
Thank you, ma'am, for that session. Wonderful. Ma'am, there are 2 questions.
I'm not hearing you very well. I'm sorry.
Ma'am, there are 2 questions.
How Rotaract International works, the hierarchy and its networking. Naeem, I know we used to have a Rotaract committee at the international level, and I know that that committee has been disbanded, and it's been disbanded for good reason, because we don't want to have Rotaract put over to the side. I happen to be part of looking at all of the committees' terms of reference, and we have many, many committees in Rotary International. But what we've done is we have said, what is the purpose of the committee? What are the skills needed to belong to this committee? And how many, how can we create as much diversity as possible from people of different backgrounds? And in many cases, we actually insisted that several of those committee places would be eligible for Rotaractors. And Rotarians, of course, but, very much looking at integrating Rotaract. I see another question here in the chat because nobody's helping me with these questions, so I'm just going to read them from the chat. How do we properly use Rotary Showcase? That is not one of my strengths, I have to admit, but I think it is a fantastic concept to share ideas. Everything great in Rotary starts at the club level. And so by putting your projects onto Showcase, it gives other people a chance to jump onto the same bandwagon, onto the same project without having to reinvent the wheel. So why not use Showcase, and why not leverage what you're doing? If we can take some smaller district projects or MDIO projects and leverage them on a global basis, we're going to have much more impact. I see a question here from Vatsal. How you feel about the new rule for Rotaract giving certificate, one Rotaractor donating $100 against the rule till last year, which required at least five Rotaractors. I don't know anything about that rule, I will admit. However, I personally think all of us should give what we can to the foundation. It's our foundation. And, if we put in, as I say, I made it my charity of choice. But I think personally, that should be at a level that any individual can afford, as opposed to a blanket number. So I think it's better if you give something, if not nothing. So I think that's all the ones I can see so far. I hope there's more questions.
Ma'am, one last question is that how Rotaract International works, the hierarchy and its networking. If I get into any new country, how to connect with the club there?
So there is a Rotary Club Finder app. I wish there was more app usage, to be honest. I think it's a real missed opportunity for us to not have a better mobile strategy in Rotary. And I know we are doing a lot to enhance the technology of the Rotary.org platform, but I believe if you go onto the Rotary.org platform, the global platform, there is a club finder there, and there's also an app somewhere called the Rotary Club Locator. So you can do that. But go through your district, go through your districts, go through your connections there and ask them to be connected globally. And, I think there's a massive event called Inter-Rota that's going to be held in Tunisia in March, which is starting to bridge this rather large gap between Rotaract and Rotary. So I'm hoping to go there. And I think that's where we have to start figuring out how we can work better together at all levels of Rotary. I did talk a little bit about addressing that question because I talked about committees and how we're integrating the committee structure to be mixture of Rotarians and Rotaracts. Any project that Rotary Club working on regards of climate change. Yes, there's enormous projects for Rotaract in Europe. There is a lot of work going on with respect to climate change. So I know that the MDIOs really should find a way to network together. Of course, one of the benefits that recent changes is that now you're all going to be in the Rotary International database. You'll have greater ways to find each other, better ways to find each other. But I know when I'm trying to find out something, I just jump on the internet, and inevitably you can find a Facebook group or an Instagram group to find out who's out there in the region that you're working, and just get connected with them. It's not hard. What are the differences you find in Rotaract movement of South Asia and other continents? Well, I guess that's hard for me to answer that in a true way, because I've only really started traveling recently to visit with Rotaractors outside of the United States. In GB and in Great Britain and Ireland, Rotaract is very, very early stage in its development. It used to be a lot bigger, and then it went away because the gap between our Rotarian age and our Rotaractor age was too big. So I see, however, there's a very healthy Rotaract group in Mediterranean, the Mediterranean MDIO. In fact, I'm speaking with them tomorrow night. So if you like, I could share some of their information for that event tomorrow and with your organizers, and then they could share it with you. So perhaps you can come and join in some of that conversation. When we were in Basel in Switzerland, we had 𝗥𝘁𝗏, past President Holger, and we did a great event there with some hybrid opportunity to have this same conversation about what is it that Rotaract sees as opportunity for working better together. So many ways we need to start connecting. Yes.
Yeah, we have one more question here, ma'am. Like, how can we use properly Rotary Showcase from 𝗤𝘁𝗏?
Yes, I did speak to that. I already talked about that one. I answered that one. So
Okay.
I said I didn't know a lot about Showcase, but I think it's a great idea to put it in there and upload your projects, because it's much more opportunity then for others to see it and not have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I have one more question, ma'am. I would just love to know when you will be visiting Pakistan. That would be great if Rotarians get together physically.
Yes, so I've been invited. I'm coming on the 5th to the 11th of December, so very soon. And I will be visiting Islamabad, Karachi, and Lahore. And I believe there are a couple of foundation events whilst I'm there. I'm also going to be going and supporting some of the polio workers in the field, find out how devastating the floods impact has been on their work, but also looking to ways that we can partner on global grants to better assist some of the reconstruction in after the devastation of the floods. So that would be great. And yes, I mean, let's get everyone involved. I don't know if you've heard yet, but Direct Affairs from Pakistan has a fantastic initiative, very broad initiative to build smart cities and eco-villages that can withstand future floods. So Naeem, you see your picture there. So maybe you've heard a little about that. But the more we can work together on those sort of scale of projects, the more likely we're going to be to attract others to want to join us, because they'll see it as incredibly relevant to their lives as well.
Okay. So we have
Yes.
a question from KB here, ma'am. In club exemption for 60 years old man to subscription, any possible?
60-year-old man to subscription, any possible? In the club exemption for 60-year-old man to subscription. Yes, there is such thing in Rotary to be an honorary member and be excused some of the expense. I think personally, Rotary has earned a bad name in terms of how expensive it is, because we incorporate the food, the cost of the food, into the price of the dues. If you took the price of the food out, Rotary is actually incredibly affordable. And one thing that I would never forgive myself if I didn't say this to you all. I really hope that as Rotaractors, you do desire to eventually become a Rotarian. You know, we had up to 95% of Rotaractors not joining Rotary, which was just heartbreaking to me. And I think it's because that a lot of those Rotaract clubs used to be university based, and then everyone would leave and feel they weren't connected. And if you have an email address, then email addresses change because they change according to the work you're doing, possibly. But through social media, we can stay connected no matter where we are. So I think community-based Rotaractors, and wherever anyone lives, in fact, let me tell you one fantastic story of a Rotaractor, previous Rotaractor. He's actually an incoming governor. He's going to be governor next year here in Great Britain and Ireland. During COVID, he was feeling very lonely, and he was reflecting on the value of Rotary in his life. And he had actually been raised in India, in a rural part of India, and his family couldn't afford the books, but he wanted to become a doctor. So he wrote to the local Rotary Club and asked them to sponsor his books. So they did. So he was able then, because he was given the books all the way for his studies through the whole 3 to 4 years of studies to be a doctor, Rotary paid for his books. And he never forgot that. So when he qualified, he said, I'd like to join Rotaract, and he became a Rotaractor in that region of India. But ultimately, his life brought him to England. And in COVID times, he was feeling lonely. He decided to reconnect with all of his original Rotaract club from India. But what he found is many of them had gone to different parts of the world. So he brought them all together in a WhatsApp group. They kept each other company through COVID and the pandemic. And they decided that they were having so much fun being reunited that they would start a Rotary Club. So they became a Rotary Club, and he chartered that Rotary Club on the day his club was 100 years old. So what a beautiful story. And that's what we should do. We should be giving birth to new clubs and planting new clubs and finding ways to work better together, because that infused so much extra energy into his original club and brought it very alive again.
So yeah, we have one more question here, ma'am. Like my sister club didn't update their RI timely. That's why they are facing problem. I think they sent mail to rotary.org, but feedback hasn't come.
Yeah, so I can't take responsibility for that. I know that, you can, if you have these sort of frustrations, you should talk to your district governors, and they have the connections to try and make sure these things don't happen. And as you know, Rotaractors are going to be starting to be paying dues and be invoiced from January. So I do think it's very important that these data glitches get sorted. Otherwise, we won't be able to be in the same family, because we want to be in that same global database. So please do be persistent and work through your assistant governors or your district governors, or even your district membership chairs. I think they obviously have a very vested interest in making sure that they don't lose you as Rotaractors, and hopefully you become Rotarians as well. I love the fact you can be both. I think that's a great thing. And I've come across many Rotaractors who also value being a Rotarian as well. They're two different cultures that do things in different ways, but at the end of the day, we're all part of that same vision.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, so all are done with the question session. Now I'm presenting the vote of thanks. First of all, many thanks to Vice President Rotarian 𝗖cie 𝗁𝗁 for her time and valuable talk. We would like to thank all the Rotaractors who could make time and benefited through this session. I would like to specially thank PDRR 𝗥𝘁𝗶 PDRR Mukesh, and PDRR Rahul from SEARIC MDIO team, and many thanks to PDG Shannon, who coordinated and made the session happen.
Yeah, it's lovely.
I would like to again thanks to all who have joined and benefited through this session.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your valuable time and valuable talk.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.